If the US dollar is strong, Canadians need to spend more of their own dollars to get enough US dollars to buy Sarah's machines from the United States. That extra cost means they often reduce their orders. Why would Canada buy from the United States if they have to pay 40% more for everything? Sarah, from the United States, ends up selling fewer machines. This is something we were discussing in our previous segment. Now, a lot of economists say, again, it's nearly impossible to shift the global trading system to America's benefit when you have such cheap labor. We can never compete with Bangladesh, who makes clothing at super cheap prices. They aren't wrong. There are certain industries, though, that North America in general, will never compete in, and they know that. But the Trump administration doesn't necessarily care about that, and that's referenced in this Miran report. Like President Trump argues, if you don't have steel, you don't have a country. Now, would you rather not put your head down on the pillow tonight thinking the guy down south is a sociopathic madman, or actually know for a fact if there's something bigger at play here? Forget the insults. It really does nothing to understand the issue. You're probably confused why the United States is targeting Canada, and I don't blame you. Why are they doing this? Well, according to the Miran report, the United States is making their decisions on who are allies and who aren't on a variety of different factors, more than what you may think apply, and especially more than what the media leads you to believe. Whether you like it or not, these are the guidelines they've built. In any rule of negotiation, I like to think most people need to know where they're trying to negotiate from. So it's important that we look at this. Let's jump into what our first application is here. Does the nation apply similar tariff rates to their imports from the US as America does on their exports here? Put it this way, Trump's first term saw 25% tariffs on Canadian steel and 10% on Canadian aluminum, citing fears that global oversupply, especially from China, so I'm not sure why he would place it on Canada, but would undercut US production. In 2024, what's interesting is Canada followed suit because of pressure by North American steelmakers. Meanwhile, Canada's quota system for dairy, poultry, and eggs imposes super high tariffs above certain limits, which frustrates U.S. farmers even after modest market access openings under the USMCA agreement that Trump wrote up in his first term. Lastly, the U.S. argues Canada subsidizes softwood lumber by charging below market stumpage fees. Basically, softwood lumber companies are able to use government-owned land to mine trees, which makes it cheaper. In the U.S., they're not able to do that. Let's jump to our next one. In the short, yes, the nation of Canada does apply similar tariffs and retaliate anytime there are tariffs put on us. Arguably, though, it seems that unless I'm missing something, which I could be, these almost seem to cancel each other out. Now, here's the next one. Does the nation have a history of suppressing its currency, for instance, via the accumulation of excessive quantities of foreign exchange reserves? I'm going to try to simplify this. Because the US dollar is the world's reserve currency, meaning the rest of the world uses this reserve to trade, countries can buy it in huge amounts and push its value up artificially, making American goods more expensive abroad. Canada, however, holds only modest reserves, tens of billions, you could say, but China, they hold trillions. So it doesn't artificially weaken its currency or undercut US producers. China, by contrast, uses these large reserves, purchasing the American foreign exchange reserves to keep the yuan cheap, helping it export goods at lower prices. But no, Canada is not at fault. We're not. Now, does the nation open its markets to US firms in the same way America opens its markets to foreign firms operating stateside? Canada does impose tough restrictions. We are guilty here, especially to protect its cultural and critical infrastructure. It mandates Canadian content in media, while the US doesn't, although Hollywood kind of dwarfs most foreign films anyways. Telecom regulations limit foreign ownership above 10% to maintain control, and big US banks can operate under the Bank Act, but face strict capital rules, limiting their expansion. This is one area Canada has to take ownership and admit to. Although for what I think are fair reasons, obviously President Trump and his administration do not think so. Does the nation respect American intellectual property rights? No question about it, we do. Up next, does the nation help China evade tariffs via re-export? Now, there's no evidence that Canada helps China dodge U.S. steel and aluminum tariffs, and no link suggesting Canada aids China in any way. So, no. Now, here's a kicker. Does the nation pay its NATO obligations in full? You've heard this time and time again. Canada does not meet 2% defense spending targets as NATO and NATO allies are supposed to. In fact, the United States meets around 4 to 5%. So, yes, we are guilty. Now, this being said, thanks to pressure from President Trump, It seems the accountability has forced our government, and they've seemed to find a way to reach 2% spending in 2 years. Does the nation side with China, Russia, and Iran in key international disputes? The simple answer is no. And with that being said, we'll be right back to continue this fascinating discussion. Stay tuned, please.
I'ma rule the world, yeah.